Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to your favorite discussion about a movie so nice they cut it up twice. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're happy to have you here. When you last left your favorite intrepid duo, we were talking about the early part of the DCEU. And then we promised that, we were going to talk about the Justice League this week. And not only are we going to talk about the Justice League, we're going to talk about the Justice League. Because of course there are two Justice Leagues, and there's a reason for that. Let's see, is that I think that's probably the best place to start, don't you, Ryan? Is that
as always, there's a story behind the story for sure.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. I mean, let's get right into it. I mean, I don't think we're calling this a deep dive. We're not. We're just talking about the DCEU.
That's all.
Just like a couple guys talking about the DCEU. But let's talk. So obviously after Dawn of Justice and
somewhere
Superman
in a
versus
different
Batman.
multiverse, there's like two different guys talking about the DCEU, and those guys really, really like it. Sorry to cut you off, but I thought my little joke was kind of funny.
It's good. All right. So after Superman versus Batman, Dawn of Justice, and the Wonder Woman movie, I mean, obviously all of these things are leading up to the it's right there, Dawn of Justice. It's leading right to the Justice League. And so now we
Batman
get it.
versus Superman. We talked about its pros and cons, but one of the reasons it's a 3-hour tightly packed thing is because it really is doing a lot of work to tie these things together to get to this big time team up movie so that Time Warner can get all the money that they can. And this is how they felt that was the way to do it. So they do the work of that. Like this makes sense. And that big inciting incident of Superman's death, the fact that motivates Batman and to a certain degree Wonder Woman to find these other special people to do the best they can in the absence of the planet's true guardian, to protect themselves from all these outside threats that they're starting to find out about. It I mean, it all fits nicely, actually, thematically and from a story standpoint. So there was a lot of complaints, and I think rightfully so. It takes a long time to lay the groundwork for something like this extravaganza when you've got 5 or 6 different lead characters who've not had their own stories told. And then just to throw them all in the pot together and expect that the story is not going to be messy and stupid. And of course, the version that came out in theaters really did feel forced, really did feel really breakneck, fastly, irritatingly paced. But like Joel says, there's reasons behind that. So we'll kind of start with what those are.
And Zack Snyder had a vision, and everything that Zack Snyder was doing was leading to this Justice League movie. This what was going to be his big epic team up.
Yep.
And so he goes into pre-production. He is all ready. Everyone's signed up, ready to roll. And then
they shot the whole thing. That's important. They shot the whole thing.
They shot the whole thing. Yeah, you're right. They did it, and it's all wow. It was. I mean,
truly, they shot the whole thing over months and months and months, and then something happened, and that's right. Yeah, really that really makes this case kind of unique because he had all this footage of all these scenes of this big epic script that he was expected to pare down a little bit.
Yep.
But nevertheless, he had essentially a big epic film in the can. But when it comes to big budget corporate movie studio, blockbuster entertainment, that post-production, getting all those effects in there, deciding what to keep, what to get rid of, what to restructure when you get rid of stuff, like all that is obviously really, really important work. You and I talked when we were talking about Tarzan, and when David Yates basically left Tarzan, he had shot it, and it's not like the old days where he hadn't seen any footage. They had cut the scenes together essentially, but what order they put them in, how they transitioned into each other, which ones were kept, which ones were gotten rid of, like that part of the process, he wasn't really a part of. And so he had to go to premiere night and see his movie, as Warner Brothers saw it in its best commercial form. And it's not a crappy movie, but it just, something's missing. And he said, we feel that what's missing from that film is we provided, and we feel like the movie's there, but the film was sort of lost. And Zach says the same thing about Watchmen, and he says the same thing about, said the same thing about the Batman versus Superman cut. He goes, it's not, it's there, what we made is there in this shorter version. It's all there. It's just the flow of the thing and the sort of art of the thing is lost when you chop all the little pieces out of it to make something fit. And what you were about to say, Zach and Deborah Snyder lost their daughter, so I think was a teenager, and I don't remember the exact scenario, but it had happened right when shooting had wrapped for Justice League, and you just couldn't do the work that was needed, and I think he really did willingly step down from finishing the film, and gave the studio and whoever they were going to bring in his blessing to finish it up for him, because he obviously, he can't even. That's unimaginable grief that you would go through. Yeah. So, everyone was sensitive to that. And that wasn't controversial exactly, but it was one of those things where Joel says, what's worse than Zack Snyder's vision that you're annoyed with or that you don't like in these movies? This story tragically proved that what's worse is really having no vision at all. And just trying to assemble, or trying to just give the people what you think they want, you know what I mean? Instead of kind of sticking to your guns and making some sort of statement. You hope that if you make, and this is one thing I've heard all my favorite storytellers say, you hope that if you tell a story that you would like to see, that there are others who would like to see it as well. But what you really can't do when you're in the middle of this process, because there's so much collaboration involved, and there are already so many other voices and so many other pressures. That guy in that director's chair, even if he's not a writer like Snyder isn't, it's got to have that. You've got to have some sort of driving force has to come from that place, or these things turn into a mess really, really quickly. That's not to say that Warner Brothers didn't make the best movie they could, but it is very clear that the suits at Warner, who were feeling embarrassed or confused about the reaction to Batman versus Superman, and were wanting something else, were envious. I won't say what those things were, but you can all figure out what the intense envy in their hearts that they had for these other projects going on in the world. And it motivated them to try and steer this thing toward something more like that.
Right.
And to do that, they got one of the authors of a few of those films, and who was it's weird how the wheel has turned for this guy, but it was really one of the most popular filmmakers in nerddom at the time, and who was a writer and who could, and I think that's key.
Right. And
I think it's
came
key
in
that
saying
that it was a writer first, really, that came in and tried to follow the studio notes, tried to bring his own thing to what was already existed here, tried to really pare down this sort of very slowly paced rough cut that they had of the thing.
Well, also real quick, I mean, please correct me if I'm not remembering this right. I seem to, I mean, I remember that that we're talking about Joss Whedon. So Joss Whedon comes in, and Warner Brothers is like, Zach has to step aside because it's horrible family tragedy. His daughter has died very suddenly and traumatically. And so you're like, hey, Joss, can you come in, and here's everything, and here's the movie that we think. And I remember, I seem to remember Joss is like, this is Zach's film, and I'm going to do my best to bring Zach's vision.
Well, I don't know that he used terms like that, but there was very much this, we're going to deliver this thing, we're all going to rally around each other. That was the idea.
Yeah. So maybe I'm extrapolating this rallying around.
Well, and even Snyder, like, he didn't come out and say, you have my blessing, this is a great choice, this is all going to be fine. But he did sort of imply that this is how it has to be. It'll be,
everything keeps going. And
exactly,
I know you got to get this movie out.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sort of misremembering it, but but you're right. There was a sense of though of
very much so.
Look, the movie's shot. We just gotta take it over the finish line here now.
I don't object to anything you're saying, except that those exact words, we're going to follow Zach's vision. I don't think you'll find Josh saying that.
Sure. And that could, So that's where I'm,
because the Justice League movie we got really would represent a betrayal of that phrase. And
that's where I was going with this, is like, I'm remembering this, but then ultimately what we get is something that is very, very different than what Zack Snyder had originally planned.
Yeah.
And we know this now.
We're saving the details.
We actually know this.
Yeah. We're saving the details of that, because we're going to go through both versions of it here kind of in order. And we're going to talk about them with the changes or the differences in mind. So we're not skipping the theatrical cut of Justice League, but when I first saw it, and I thought it was going to be a disaster, and because I saw it sometime after it had come out and was deemed something of a disaster. But when I first saw it, I thought it was going to be terrible, and it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. But I had the expectations are everything, and I had super low expectations of the thing. So to me, I was like, oh, it could have been worse.
Right.
But there were lots of things in it where I was like, wow, this really is. There are a few sequences in it, and we'll talk about them. Certainly the main bad guy in Justice League is Steppenwolf. His appearance, that whole section that takes place on Wonder Woman's home island, that felt very Zack Snyder-ish to me. There were other bits where I was like, okay, I can kind of see it, but I just kind of was like, wow, he really meant it. I mean, Zack said at the time he was going to make they felt they'd done all this work setting all this up. He was going to make a more fun, more direct film. And I was like, it definitely is that, no question. And it was weird. Zack Snyder, I'd never seen a movie, even going back to his Dawn of the Dead remake, which has no slow motion in it. And it's just like, it's very immediate film, but even that's this sort of old school sort of widescreen entertainment. The Justice League film was different. He shot it primarily for IMAX exhibition, and for the theatrical cut, it was cropped to 1/7/8, which is the shape of your television. Yep. And it felt very television showy visually to me. And I was kind of like, that is super not Zack Snyder. I mean, say what you want for them. The slow-mo, all the dramatic, picturesque, you know what I mean? Like art gallery style stuff, when what you're really doing is telling a comic book story, can feel a little much. It can feel unnecessarily operatic, and it can weigh his stories down. I get that. But at least it is what it is. It's choreographed. It's beautiful. There's thought put into the composition, that all of it, what's moving, what's not, that sort of thing. Like he's a visualist. And that seemed entirely lost from this film. Not entirely, but like, where is it? What did he shot this film movie, right? I mean, I was really watching it going, every once in a while, something sort of weird and picturesque would happen, but
yeah,
for the most part, I didn't feel that. And I thought at the time, and I've been since proven wrong this past weekend, when I watched the Snyder cut of the film, but I thought at the time it was that change in aspect ratio. It was like, dude, you're sort of a master of this certain shaped image. And now, you know, even Sucker Punch, like even the garbage that he's made is like really, really, really well thought out. And they compare him a little bit to Michael Bay in that way, but he's because Michael Bay also really visually assured storyteller, even though he's a fairly crappy actual storyteller.
Yeah.
Fairly crappy is being, you know, generous.
When I think about Zack Snyder and how he composes a shot, I think a lot about 300 and how a lot of those action sequences and how just how the balance on the screen, or the intentional, you know, unbalancing and just some of those visuals.
When he reads a comic book, he really does in a way that some of us would like to think we can, but we can't, because we don't have a mind like this kind of, you know, artist. He reads it visually every bit as much, if not more, than he reads the story. And that's, of course, what's awesome about comic books. And that's why even at their most pedestrian, they make sort of breezy, visually interesting films. Justice League is not even the theatrical version is not like some ugly movie by any means, but it doesn't feel like Zack Snyder at all. And that's because everything that Zack did, even the stuff that he finished to some degree, even the dramatic scenes have been altered sort of inexorably. And the film, in a shorter length, it got more showings, but it wasn't well regarded really by much of anybody. There wasn't tons and tons of hate for it, and there certainly wasn't the scorn and the attacks on it like there were on Batman versus Superman. But a part of that is, at this point, and this is the real sad thing, if you're a Warner Brothers executive, at this point, who cares? It's like, what's the next movie? You know, what's coming out next week? It was really just came and went with a whimper. And it kind of goes to show you that even bad publicity is good publicity compared to a shrug. That's sort of the worst thing your movie can end up being in the end. And that was the reaction to it. So time goes by. Snyder was told, I can't remember which director I said it on the show at one point. A fellow filmmaker who saw this version of it texted him and said, "Don't see it.
Yeah, don't see it.
Don't see it. It'll fucking break your heart."
Wasn't it Nolan? Wasn't it Nolan who said that? I think it was
Chris. It doesn't sound like him. I think it was a renowned filmmaker, you know. But that doesn't sound like Christopher Nolan to me.
Okay.
Maybe. Either way, somebody's like, "Don't see it, man. Don't see it. Don't see it." And he didn't, and he still hasn't. If you believe what he says, he's never watched that version of the film. And that's crazy, because wouldn't you be at least curious? But I guess this is a trusted friend, and I think he saw the writing on the wall, basically. I mean, because I think he was aware of what was happening to it. Anyway, there's still some DC diehards there. They exist, believe it or not. And they really were pining away for the actual, as Joel puts it, vision to be released at some point. If he shot the whole thing, it's all there. And we were all, there's no way. It's because it's not a matter of letting him put his quote cut out there. You have to take all that footage. You do have to cut it. And then you have to finish the movie again. Music, effects, color timing, everything. You literally have to do it all again. And a film on that scale, where the original came out in the theater, again, it made Warner Brothers some money, but it was just a huge disappointment for what their commercial ambitions were for that story. And you're not going to do it again. None of us believe we would ever see that. I'm still sort of stunned that we did, but something magical happened that motivated its existence from a corporate standpoint. And that thing is called HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
HBO Max, it wants content. It wants exclusive original content. It wants something that it can say, you can only get it here, baby. And this wasn't all the way done, like I said, but it was half done.
Right.
COVID came, HBO Max got launched, streaming numbers, which were already ruling the world, just broke through the roof. And suddenly they had this thing where they could say, God, if we can dress this up, we can put the stamp of artistic integrity on it. There's like all this stuff we can sell. Let's do it. And so they ponied up 100 million, whatever, and change to finish this, because Zach wouldn't finish it unless he could finish it like he was wanted to. It wasn't like he was going to come in, like we saw we were talking a few episodes back, the Alien 3 assembly cut, where they just put these digital effects in and they just did them just as good as they had to get the thing out. But they clearly weren't interested in it being, they're releasing it 15 years later or whatever, and they don't care. This had to be done right if it was done at all. And it really, they gave him the power to do it all. And it got released to the world. And we can talk about the differences. We can talk about our feelings about both the pros and cons a little as we go and at the end. But Joel found a great article, which we need to quote because our show is basically stealing from the structure of this.
Yeah.
From IGN.
From IGN.
There are 100 differences between the Snyder cut and the theatrical cut of Justice League articles out there. Some of them are very interesting. What this one did really nicely was it narrowed it down to a handful of manageable bullet points. And then within those bullet points, it provided a decent amount of detail for us so that we could discuss it.
Yeah.
Is there a credited author? We should probably credit him too.
Sure. Matt Fowler at IGN.
So Matt, thank you for this episode of the movie show with Joel and Ryan, because we are taking your article and we're going to read bits of it, probably word for word. And
right. And
we'll provide the link along with the episode when we post it on Facebook anyway.
Oh yeah, good idea. Yeah, because I mean it's really good. He even hyperlinks a lot of these things, which is really, he clearly did a lot of.
He's got a little YouTube thing of stuff for each thing. It's very well done, and it made this easy because even having seen both isn't enough. They're the same story. Right. The story isn't fundamentally changed. Just as a first thought, the story isn't fundamentally changed, even though we've gone from a slightly under 2-hour movie to an almost 4-hour movie.
Right.
The story hasn't changed that much. It's just ultimately that's it. We're talking about the same story. So here we go.
Right. And the first, we touched on the first major change is that aspect ratio, and it does mean how it it was, Zack Snyder, the 178 to 1 ratio
that was definitely a change from his previous films. Yeah, and even on the studio cut of Justice League, he's still the credited director. Joss Whedon isn't. As a matter of fact, Joss has no credit at all, even though he basically supervised the entire post-production of that thing. Maybe he's a producer or something. I'd have to go back and look. But for the amount of work he did on the thing, he's not really credited. He made a decent chunk of change for doing it. Right. But
but moving it, but the first, when you turn on the Snyder cut version of it, and
first thing you see is a disclaimer about the shape of the screen, right?
Yeah.
Very first thing.
Yeah.
Not only now is this not an old widescreen epic Panavision film. It's not just a TV show aspect ratio. It's an old Academy, Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz. It's basically the shape of your old television. It's a virtually square image, 133 by 1.
Yeah, and it was because he liked the IMAX. He shot some scenes in Batman versus Superman in IMAX, and then had these grand visions as he was going to put this on IMAX screens, and it was going to be.
And unlike the Christopher Nolan films and some of these others that are on IMAX screens where the aspect ratio would change, he was going to go back and do it basically like they did Avatar, which is the only other movie I know that has 3 different aspect ratios, where he literally wanted the whole movie to play on the entire IMAX screen the entire time. So he shot everything and edited everything, protected for this square image that would look miraculous on an IMAX screen. Mm-hmm. Even though it's not all shot with IMAX cameras, it's not even mostly shot with IMAX cameras. But that shape of the giant IMAX screen is preserved throughout the entire film. And when you watch that on your TV, it's not quite. It's not an exact match for what the IMAX image would have been, but it's as close as you get.
Yep.
And it's stunning. It's stunning. It's the most beautiful squared image film I've seen in quite some time.
Sure.
And there've been a handful. Horror movie directors are doing this. The Witch, very famously, is in that square image. There's this sort of Steven Soderbergh shot The Good German that way. So there's this sort of, but those are little movies that can play around with this sort of stuff. This is a massive film, and I really expected it to feel cramped and cropped, and it doesn't. You do not feel in any shot that you're missing information. So even though we've come all this way, you've all been taught what the black bars at the top and bottom of the image mean and their importance to preserving the actual visual integrity of the thing. Now, after all this time, you've got them on the sides of your screen like you're watching an old episode of Magnum PI, and it probably feels disorienting at first. But I can tell you, I watched it here at home in native 4K on a 60-inch screen, and that I'm about 8.5 feet away from, and I was like, this is really awesome. So give that aspect ratio a chance. It's weird.
It will seem weird for a few minutes, and then you just roll with it, because the movie, whether you love whether you love the movie or not, it ain't boring. Right. I mean, it takes off.
It is long and ponderous, but I agree with Joel. It is not boring at all.
Certainly not visually. Certainly not visually boring. Right. So then the next big thing that we get and that we're going to talk about, because we can talk about, like, these first few are just sort of universal things about the film that are different,
that you should notice right away, basically.
And well, you're certainly going to notice when Batman tells the Joker, "I will effing kill you." And we're like, did Batman just drop an F-bomb?
Man. Batman did. A couple people do in this film. There's added violence, but maybe I looked away or something, but I didn't see a lot of extra violence that would warrant an R rating, to be honest. There are a few bad words thrown in there, and it is an R-rated film in the Snyder cut. So that's completely different than the PG rated, very colorful version of it that we got the theatrical aim.
Mhm. And you know,
there's added violence. Don't get me wrong. I still feel like it's pretty much just PG violence. I mean, they let PG-13 movies get away with a lot of violence, Joel, you know. But you have one F-bomb that can't mean sex. So they basically, PG-13 lets you have one as long as it's an adjective or as long as it's used in a way that's not
usually effing. It's effing. Yeah, I'm gonna effing do this, or that, you know, when it effing.
They'll even give you an FU, but that's it. That's what it has to be. And this movie has not many, but it's got more than one, which is more than the ratio they let you have. So
and they do.
These rules are still not written anywhere, but we just know when you've watched a bunch of films.
Everyone knows that that if they release something with a couple F-bombs, that the ratings board is going to go, wow, no, there's too many.
Sometimes they release a perfectly PG-13 or PG movie with a couple F-bombs just to get an adult audience. It's been known to happen. They go for the rating, and that's how they get it. So this film, it doesn't need the F-bombs. It really doesn't. Matter of fact, that even the line Joel's talking about, which we'll get to in context, but it really does scream, you know, a little kid gets to say a bad word on stage, you know, in context. And so I'm really gonna punch it. And those are always lame to me.
Yep. And so the next thing, I mean, so they did add some CGI blood as part of these longer extended action sequences that, you know, especially some of the battles, the battle with the parademons and Steppenwolf and the Amazons.
That's feels much more violent and intense.
Yeah, that to me is that's the big one.
It's visually, it's the same sequence, but it does have these little bits and stuff. Yeah, and that, of course, that comes right at the beginning of the film. The film's kind of weird. It doesn't set up the bad guys in any sort of useful way. They just appear.
Yeah.
We do learn what their goals are and stuff throughout the film, but that's not normally how you do it. Normally you get the flashback scene or whatever, which this, I don't know that this film needs that, but you know, you get that. You actually do kind of get that later. It's neat that you find out in the Snyder cut, you find out that you get that flashback scene later in the film. In the theatrical cut, you don't really, you get a sort of explainer, quick version of it that isn't nearly as satisfying or doesn't feel nearly as historical or epic.
Yeah, there's let's see, the underneath the battle underneath the island.
That's my favorite action sequence in the film, actually. That bunker fight.
Yeah,
I mean, that was the best scene I thought in the theatrical cut, and it's the best scene here, and it's much better here because it's actually less busy. There's less talking, there's less joking, and when you sort of lift that stuff out of that scene, because it's as an extended action sequence, it's barely extended. It's a little extended, but it's cleaner and to the point of what the scene is supposed to be. The scene has a goal, and that goal is the thing that propels it forward. And they're doing all this stuff. There's communication between them, but it's task oriented, not you know, which makes a difference. So I like that scene in both versions. I really liked it better, and we'll talk more about it in a bit because that's actually on the list. And then the ending didn't feel, at least the action didn't feel longer to me, but there is more of it. Because there's, and we'll talk about this too, but there's been a big subplot excised out of that, which again, it's a longer, more intense action sequence that feels shorter because it's so much less busy. It's so much more direct.
Yeah. And we, you know, so we have these action sequences are more violent, that they're longer. There's a lot going on in them. And so that in itself sort of tells a story that this is not, you know, this is I guess I would liken it to saying this is a graphic novel as opposed to a comic book, because it is more serious. There's and one way that when Joss Whedon took over, there was some jokes that were in there. There's some little quippy one-liners and all
Matt's
that
article.
stuff.
Actually, when you deep dive into that, go into there and just sort of give us his take on the jokes. He can do it better than I can.
Yeah, he's like Zack Snyder wanted to do with his version of Justice League was to have the film reflect the more darker, more serious tone of his previous movies, Man of Steel and Batman, Superman.
He wanted it to be a lighter movie, but he didn't want to just take this massive leap into zaniness, which it definitely doesn't. So
and Joss Whedon, maybe he had done some films with the other guys, kind of wanted to reflect that tone a little bit. But not all of the film's jokes are gone in the Snyder cut. Barry Allen as the Flash, he's goofy, he's awkward, he's
the verbal diarrhea character in the movie, and he is in both versions. He's much more tolerable in the Snyder cut than he is in the other one, because again, his stuff it's been pared down to these simple plot oriented things instead of just a bunch of nonsense, and it really helps.
Bruce doesn't ask Arthur if he can talk to fish or mention his past battle with penguins. Barry doesn't question what brunch is. Cyborg doesn't say booyah. Arthur doesn't have that lasso of truth speech.
Cyborg, we'll get to him in a second, but good lord, did the studio not understand what that character was. Right. I mean, really, that's really where the differences are pronounced, even in the story differences.
Yeah,
mostly with that character, but a little bit but the best jokes are still there. That's the thing that surprised me. I was expecting they'd be gone. What's your superpower? I'm rich. That's the best joke in the whole thing. It's still there. That was part of the original script. Aquaman still gives Batman crap the whole movie about dressing up like a bat. So you dress up like a bat, huh?
Yeah.
That stuff was really funny. In the theatrical version, it's in this, he kind of shows up to save the day, and it's this whole thing, and it's like at that point you show up to save the day, or you pop your head in to make a quick one-liner. You almost can't have it both ways. Mm-hmm. The Snyder cut's very cool. It gets all that ribbing out of the way in the first place, and in a place that it's less ha-ha funny, but it works better because it's in the context of Aquaman rejecting the invitation to join some greater organization.
Yeah.
And when he does show up, he just shows up, shuts up, and kicks ass, and that's what you want him to do. So those are great ones that he picked out because they're stupid. Booyah is stupid. Mm-hmm. That stuff was dumb, and I was just stunned that there's still plenty of humor in the movie. Delighted. And there's even more with some minor characters like Alfred in particular, and some other characters whose role is expanded to the point that now their humor and their outlook on the story is back. And Alfred really benefits from that, in my opinion. In the longer version. Because he's genuinely funny. He was very funny in Batman versus Superman, and he's super funny in Justice League, and that sort of was lost for whatever weird reason.
And then the other big sort of global thing that was different between the two movies is the score.
You can't, and this has been proven, when you recut an entire film, especially as dramatic as this one, you can't just piecemeal a score together. A lot of the television versions and the extended versions that have been archived and that have seen the light of day lately, we talked about Superman 1978, but there's a whole bunch. One of the big reasons those are able to be offered to us is because the score was cut to them. Mm-hmm. If you had to try and put pieces of the score back in, like the longer version of Dune does, to disastrous effects, it butchers the movie, it butchers the score, it butchers everything. It just makes a mess of everything. And that's the best version where you can watch it and go, oh, what are they doing? This is terrible.
Yeah.
A score is really, really, really hard. And so they did away with Danny Elfman's entire score, which the most notable thing about it, because Elfman, I don't even like talking about him in the context of his worst work, but here we are. The because I love Danny Elfman. I just think he's a really unique voice in film scoring. His arrival on the scene was like a shot of adrenaline into the movie industry, truly in the mid 80s. And he was just this new generation of guys who was going to do this stuff differently. And he is that. So I love him, but his score is really, it's just really obviously punctuates the usual crap. I mean, I don't want to get into all the minutia what a movie score is. I'm not sure that's interesting. It is what you feel and not really what it is musically. But his score is like most modern scores. There's nothing to it. It's most famous for quoting his 1989 Batman theme from the Tim Burton series and the 1978 John Williams Superman theme, both of which were that got people really excited, and both of which I thought were just terrible. It's the last thing you want to be thinking about when you're at 2/3 of the way through Justice League is the 1978 Superman.
Right.
It's just, don't want to have that film on your mind when you're watching this crud, because it just, however decent enough it is, it completely suffers by comparison to both of those films.
Sure.
Michael Keaton's Batman and that sense of fun, even though the film's kind of fun, that's nowhere to be found here. That is not part of what this is.
Yeah.
The new composer is far less accomplished. Do we have his name handy?
It's Thomas Holkenborg, but he's best known as Junkie XL.
Junkie XL is the guy who wrote that great. I mean, he collaborated in the earlier films with Hans Zimmer, but he wrote that great Wonder Woman battle cry theme. Yep. He where the other film avoided these 100% avoided them altogether. He honors Hans's Superman theme. When you hear Hans Zimmer's Man of Steel theme come when Superman is, spoiler alert, being resurrected, it's wonderful. It's so awesome. And that's a theme that's not as celebrated. It's not as old. It's not part of our language of cinema, but it is perfect for these movies. It represents that character. And when you have it tied together, and it's also really beautiful in its own right, that's what should be in here. You know what I'm saying? And the whole new score represents, this is what we intended. This was our thing. This is it.
Yeah.
It's weird. I didn't realize that guy was Junkie XL. Joel, I might as well just admit, I saw his real name and I was like, I never even heard of this dude.
Comment. I would only know.
He's usually credited as Junkie XL in his films. In this film, he's credited with his actual name. Okay, very cool. Well, he's welcome. He brings continuity. He embraces the continuity in the series, and his score is excellent. And given that it's Junkie, it's not surprising that it is. It's Junkie XL, as you'd expect somebody with that moniker is bombastic, and it's heavy music. So, I don't always love that, but whatever, that's his style. That's been the style of these films. And when the movie brings it down a little bit, he manages the intimate moments in a more meaningful way than that other movie did. So
yeah.
Amen to the new score. And again, really, really lucky that we got that.
Yeah.
It's a 4-hour movie he had to score more or less from scratch. Once it had already been released, but it makes all the difference. The right music makes all the difference.
Yeah. All right. So I would agree. I agree with. Let's get into some of the specific things and that are different between the two movies. And in doing so, we will be talking about the movie itself.
We'll spoil the entire movie. We're going to basically work through
So
it we've already spoiled some of the highlights, but if you've been waiting this long and trying to decide which one to watch, I mean, that seems absurd to me, but. I feel like in the world, you're either someone who was going to watch these or wasn't.
Right.
I watched them both. Joel watched them both. And Joel, I know, wasn't really excited to watch the first iteration at all, and I think was had a healthy skepticism about what the longer version would be. As did I. I was kind of like, it wasn't like I needed I wasn't first in line last February or whatever to watch it. I waited till last weekend to watch it. So I was like, we'll see.
I mean, anyone who listens to this show knows that you like Zack Snyder a lot more than I do.
Well, I think I like him more than the average person because I think I appreciate what he brings to the party, and I think the criticisms about him are cheap and easy, and they completely ignore like how much better he is than his peers. Michael Bay is a good example. Like we said during Batman versus Superman, during the Clark Kent's funeral, when he wants to nail something, he does. When he wants to show something we've seen 100 times before, like Batman's parents being killed or whatever, he just does this sort of version of it. That's the biggest, craziest, slow motioniest version, and it can be exhausting. I get that. When I first saw 300, I thought it was completely exhausting. But 300, now that there have been 100 other blockbuster films of its type in its wake, actually, when you go back and watch it, it's way better than I remember. Because there's a core of something there that he gets that some of his contemporaries don't. And I like that.
So in the entire opening of the movie is different from movie A to movie B. Gone is the podcast kids filming Superman. Gone is Superman's funeral and the world mourning his loss.
We've seen all this already, which is why it's gone.
And sorry, if you're hearing dings in the background, it's because I forgot to turn my watch off.
So just to say why my belief as to why that stuff isn't there is because it's not needed. It was all in the last film. Well, not the podcast stuff, but you just don't. The longer version of Justice League, and it's much longer, it excises that because it assumes you've seen the other movie. You really don't need this. Whereas I really do think in the back of the minds of the folks at Warner, they were thinking, this is it. This is our coming out party, baby. This is where our superhero movies are going to take it to the next level. And they sort of made it for that. It has to stand on its own sort of. Yeah. And it doesn't, and it's better when it doesn't. Justice League is better in the context with these other movies than it is as its own thing. So there you go. So
Batman kicks off the movie. I already, like as the article points out here, he already knows that there's an alien invasion. And he uses he's able to lure out a parademon, and the
longer version of. Well, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and the burglar, a burglar played by Mindhunter's Holt McCallany, he does a ton of heavy lifting on the exposition front. This is where we get a lot of this is where we get
none of this is in the long version.
Yeah. And now we get so that was in the old. Now we get the Snyder cut starts with Superman screaming upon his death, and that is what wakes up these mother boxes. It's that the death of this hero,
all visual. It's a complete economy of storytelling. There's no random burglar guy who has all the answers for you conveniently. Spilling it all out for you. It's such a better opening. I just don't even know what to say. It's so much better. Agree. It is vaguer. It takes time to get that same amount of information into the movie, but that shot of Batman, of Bruce Wayne watching Superman die, it's really, really powerful. It's everything Zack's accused of. It's overwrought. It's huge, massive scream from hell. It's all in slow motion, of course. But it's powerful visually, and it tells you everything you need to know. The funeral and all that, it's this. He died. This is how. he died saving the world from this thing that was going to kill us. It's all there. Nobody says any of that crap. You see it all in the performances, much better.
And what's important to the movie is the repercussions of that death.
It's funny how that simple idea was lost in the theatrical cut too.
Yeah.
Superman made the interstellar people, all the bad guys that are threats to us, terrified of coming to Earth. not just in a intellectual way, but they could just sense and feel this place was off limits with him there. And now they don't. Now they literally feel like the gates have been opened wide. That whatever that is, that feeling, that thing, it spreads throughout the universe, and now these threats are coming for us, and that's communicated again rather wordlessly and perfectly. Somebody gives words to that idea later in the film, but
and we get a little bit of a with Bruce Wayne going around trying to find these other people with
I know
abilities.
It's long and stupid and it does nothing, but how cool is watching Bruce's entire climb over that mountain to get to that isolated fishing village where he finds Arthur. How cool is it? It's so cool. Of course, this is very early in the movie when I'm okay with things taking forever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like later, I'm not going to like that so much. But and that's something that we can say. It is a kind of for better or worse thing. I don't necessarily think it's for worse, but some just a pile of nothing sequences that do nothing take forever in this film. It really is padded out to get to 4 hours in a way that each sequence taken on its own, I don't have a problem with. Just like each song in that stupid Hugh Jackman circus musical, like each song I don't really hate. I hate that they're all piled on top of each other to the point of exhaustion. Part of being a director is you got to pick and choose where you want to do this kind of stuff, where you want the music and the visuals to take over, because you can't do it for an entire film, or you're just like, what? Come on, man. I mean, I'm with you, but come on. And we'll talk about a few of them here as we get to them. They're coming up.
All right. So the next,
but this one, Joel, was awesome. And then they talk about it. They're like, how do you get here?
Yeah.
He says he came over the mountain, and they're all like, no.
Nobody comes over the mountain.
That
is cool. The whole, I mean, it is. It's just a much more interesting way to open the film.
Yeah.
And then
the conversation between Bruce and Arthur is the same. It's the exact same conversation.
Yeah. But then, the sort of the baddie, the main villain of this piece, that there's the reason why. Well, I'm going to kind of combine the next 2 points. The reason why our primary villain in Steppenwolf, the whole reason why he is the villain of this film is different between these. In the Zack Snyder version, he is trying to get back into the good graces of the super mega bad Darkseid. Yeah,
I've called him Darkseid my whole life. Well, this is the first time where I've heard characters on screen saying his name out loud, and it's clearly Darkseid. But it's just a little thing. Like,
but no, when you look at it, you easily
I was
can look
1
at it
week
and say it's
old
Darkseid.
Ago when I learned it was Darkseid. I'm saying that wrong. Internet memes. It's just, if you don't mind, create one for me that's formatted correctly.
Correct.
If you're following what I'm saying, I was like, Darkseid.
It's Darkseid.
All right.
All right.
Darkseid he's been implied. He was implied majorly in the nightmare sequence that we talked about in Batman versus Superman, that we almost skipped, but that we circled back and talked about, because it's important. Darkseid's influence on Earth, and in that dream, his dominion over Superman, in sort of and I guess in this way it's appropriate that he's Darkseid, in sort of an Emperor Darth Vader kind of relationship, is is terrifying. It's Batman freaks out about it. And there's this idea, again, it's just an idea. It's not explained, but there's this idea that part of Flash's trip from the future to give him this warning inspired this sort of fever dream, and that there's a lot of truth to it, even though it's still a dream and it has a nonsensical delivery in that way. All that's, it's all that is that kind of stuff you love to theorize about when you're watching, films like this. And so Darkseid is a big deal. And Steppenwolf, who's a really badass villain, you've seen him and his minions sort of mow down the powerful Amazonian warriors. And you just realize what that means. Again, it's visually told to you. They don't say, we've never had a defeat like this or any stupid crap like that. You just feel it. You see it, you feel it. You feel their loss and their exhaustion at the end of it. And it really works great. And the fact that he's just a minion of a much scarier guy is sort of terrifying without doubt.
Yeah, he's trying to whereas the first movie is he's trying to get the anti-life equation so that he can rule over things. He's now just trying to get trying to get to the anti-life equation to help to say hey, Darkseid.
And we'll just skip to this because this really isn't on the list. It's sort of in both versions, but Earth was the why it's a big prize, and Steppenwolf doesn't know this when he shows up, and he finds out that why it's a big prize to Darkseid, and why it's likely to get Steppenwolf absolved of his previous sins is that it's the place where at one point the Vikings and the Atlanteans, Aquaman's people, and the Amazonians, and Lantern and a handful of other super people fought back Darkseid's invasion of Earth during ancient times. And it's the only place he's ever lost. It's the only world he's ever set his eyes on that he didn't conquer. Now, why he's forgotten about that in just a few hundred years, because it's not that ancient times. I didn't see any dinosaurs roaming around or anything.
Right.
It was when the written word was in existence. So it's not like there's, we still perform plays from back then, I believe. Joel, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So why he's like, that's the place? That seems weird, but it's fun. It's fun. Yay, Earth, by the way, right? Earth first.
Oh, well, yeah. Hey.
We did it. And it adds to the stakes of the thing somehow, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. And
Wonder Woman finds all this out when the Amazonians send a signal out to the world. The one Amazonian lady, she's like, well, they want it. The old alliances are dead. They won't even know what it means. And she said, Connie Nielsen's pretty good in this movie in her brief appearances. She says she'll understand what it means. Very one of those very cool.
Right.
Because we're all like, she doesn't say Wonder Woman will understand or Diana will understand. She says she will. And we get to go, she means Wonder Woman. And that's always fun for an audience member.
Yeah, I think so. So Steppenwolf, his whole deal of having to get back.
He's a very different character in this version.
He's a very different character, looks different, sounds a little different, and his whole motivation.
He's more pathetic, but much more driven toward his goals. He's not a lofty, unapproachable big bad who's alien and we don't understand him. He's got a real important reason to him as to why he's here, and that like I say, that it sort of makes him feel a little small, but it propels him in a way that he is not propelled in the earlier films.
And we also get, because we get Darkseid in Justice League, we get Darkseid's right hand man, Desaad, who is I like that he puts it he as
I always called him Darsad. I'm so stupid. I can't read, folks. I guess that's why I watch so many movies.
But we get, he makes sure that his master doesn't have to endure Steppenwolf's pleading or failures.
He's the perfect interstellar evil middleman. He's definitely the James Mason of this particular film. I mean, he's
right.
Dersad is barely in it, but he that all comes across, which is great. That just shows you that you can do it if you keep it honestly, if you keep it simple. And that's the most amazing thing about the 4-hour version is it's a much simpler version of the story. And it's simpler because everything's on the line and you understand everything, and it really does make a difference when you're watching the film. The noise has been taken out of it, and there's nothing to distract you from the thing that is happening. That's the biggest difference between the two, in my opinion.
Yep.
It's not Joss Whedon is jokier, which he is. It isn't that. It's that all that stuff contributes very little to what's happening on screen, and because of that, you take that busyness out of it, and it just feels like I'm getting everything here, like it's all happening. I'm following it. We talked about that with Batman versus Superman, and it's totally true.
Yeah.
The hour longer version feels much shorter because you get all of it. You're not missing a beat.
All right, and then next up we get to some of our side characters, and I feel bad calling Amy Adams a side character, but it's Lois Lane.
She is, though. In this film, she is.
Yeah, in this film she is, and in this film she, in the Snyder cut, she is in mourning. She is and in full on, like she doesn't work. She's just going to the memorial every day.
She brings coffee to Mark McClure, Jimmy Olsen, among other things, and Marty's older brother, and Capcom and Apollo 13. Good old Mark McClure. It's fun to see him again. He plays this cop who walks the beat out at the memorial, and she brings him coffee every day, and they have this. So even though she's in mourning, there's this sort of cute relationship there, which I sort of dug. And then when he's threatened later, and again, it's not like he's our favorite character or anything, but it means something later in the film, which I think is neat.
Right.
It's normally I'm not in favor of recognizable cameos, but this one works kind of on every level in a very clever way, so I appreciate it. And it's just always good to see Mark.
Agreed. And but in Whedon's film, she's still at the Daily Planet. She's still working. She's just doing puff pieces and stuff, but she's still working. And then
I don't even know why you bother making a distinction there. That's a little weird. I could get it. I mean, I don't think one's better than the other. I just like what was wrong with she's not working? I mean, what did this change improve or even change anything? It's the same thing. So
right.
why
I
bother?
sort of, I don't know. It's what, and it's, the next thing with Martha Kent coming to visit Lois.
Okay. This was the thing in the Snyder cut that I hated the most. I'll just say that.
I think I probably.
I liked this scene a lot, and then I felt like I got kicked in the nuts when it was over in a not very pleasant way.
Yep.
Not that it was that big a deal, but I just feel like, you jerks. What are you talking about? So Martha comes to visit, and this is a relationship that, again, we've only seen little pieces of, but that is it's one that really works in these movies. Diane Lane and Amy Adams, there's something between them. They
absolutely are able to fill in every little moment and every moment between the moments with just all sorts of connection. It's so really,
this conversation they have where Martha kind of comes to they are commiserating together, but she really is like, you need to go on, you really do need to go on. I get how you feel. She's lost the farm. All this bad stuff has happened, but we need you back in the world, or what are you? Yeah. And what was this all for? And we've all heard that speech, even in our lives. So we sort of we've all had that, we don't want to go on sort of feeling. It's all very relatable and wonderful. And then it just turns out that Martha's not even Martha. She's a Martian.
We think it's, it's like, essentially it's that mother, it's what you envision if a married couple and the husband dies and the mother-in-law, it comes and says, it's okay. I know you loved my son, but you gotta move on. And then you're right. It is a kick in the gut when we find out that wasn't Martha Kent.
It was
That
just
was Martian Manhunter.
It was Henry Lennox, who we've seen in the movie before, General what's his face, and it's so awkward too, because to understand who he is, we have to old school Terminator 2 morph from Diane Lane to Henry Lennox to a weird alien that we've never seen before. And with each morph, I wanted to punch somebody even harder in the face. I get what they're doing. I understand I really do get this DC stuff to some degree. So I know where that story is going, but I'm like, screw you for making Martha's only appearance, really her second appearance technically, but really her main appearance be an alien whose motives are not even entirely altruistic in the scene. Like I hated that.
Yeah,
I hated that. I hated it.
Yes, I did as well. All right, and then so then we get a little bit more of the Flash. We get a little bit more of
well, you get a whole huge sequence of the Flash where he saves his girlfriend's life, or spoiler alert, his to-be girlfriend, the love of his life, saves her life. That's a massive new addition. Yeah, it's basically what substitutes for an origin story for Flash, because he's not had that yet.
Yeah, because we know that Flash is going to get his own movie, and that's where I presume we'll get his origin story. But this, you're right. That's actually a really accurate way to say it. Is that we don't, because we don't get an origin story, we sort of get a origin, like almost like an emotional origin story.
We get a post origin story for Arthur, for Aquaman. That happens in this. It hasn't happened yet, but we get introduced to him before we get that, but we get it. Yeah. We absolutely get it for Cyborg, and we get it for Flash. None of these scenes really are in little bits of the Aquaman one, but none of these are in the other version. And I get it. This one is especially ponderous, the one with Flash, because even though it's really fun and you get an idea who he is, and you go to Central City, I love that he's from Central City. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan works in a place called Coast City. I mean, it's like, these are great names, folks. Seriously, it's like, come on, guys. You can come up with, with Coast City. Seriously, it's Jacksonville in the movie, but I guess that's a coast city. My point is, you travel to Central City. Cyborg's from Gotham. Actually, that's kind of cool that they made that all work together. But this scene takes way too long. It's that idea that the guy who moves really, really fast, we watch in real time, and then everything in the world slows way down.
Yeah, that's
not moving, and that's
Zack
cool.
Snyder's
We've
wet
seen
dream.
that. Yeah, but it plays into his excesses a little too much. And this scene I like it. I'm glad it's back, but it's fun. The girl is cute. Him trying to get a job in a pet store is funny. Like, there's a lot to like about it, and it's great that this is when we meet him rather than when Batman finds him, because that works for Arthur. It didn't work for Flash in the shorter version, and which this scene is super helpful in that way. But it doesn't need to be this long. It can be half this long and still be very entertaining and very effective.
Right.
So this was the first place in the film where I was like, yeah, we get it. We get it. Move along. Click into super fast speed anytime now. He is called the Flash. Why is everything he does in the movie feel so slow?
Right.
But whatever.
And then we get so we also get a great little appearance by Willem Dafoe as
Very
Volko.
Again, very cool that Amber Heard and Willem Dafoe are in this film before the Aquaman movie was even made.
Right.
For us, in the time of life, real life, we know these people already. Everyone has seen Aquaman before they saw the Snyder Cut, but their presence, it makes the film feel bigger in a really cool way. Dafoe's in particular, but Heard's as well. It makes the film feel bigger. It makes it, we don't know who Dafoe is in this. We're not explained who these people are, what's going on here really at all. But there's a little exposition, but the point is that there's a larger world here, and you get the sense of that, and that there are very high stakes here. That a wiser character seems to understand that Momoa's character doesn't, and the scene plays great that way. Loved seeing William Dafoe again. Loved it.
Yeah, and then we get let's get into Cyborg. So there's I mean there's a huge amount of Cyborg
was butchered by the studio.
Yeah.
And Ray Fisher's been on a crusade against them. Not so much for that reason, although it has to have played a part in it, because he signed up to do this thing based on what he saw that the movie was, and then to find out that the movie wasn't even vaguely that. And some of this I sympathize with. Some of this is just communication. Some of it's us old white guys are just stupid, Ray. We're just stupid. You know, we say things like, maybe the black guy in the movie shouldn't be angry all the time. Maybe he shouldn't be the one to say the F-bomb. Maybe, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, we think that way. We want to represent in a positive way. You get if you get what I'm saying. He was really, really angry at an executive for saying that. He felt he was really, really badly treated by Joss Whedon. He was pushed around because he was really resistant to playing the character, even though the character is a quarterback for the Gotham City college team. He didn't like playing him like what he felt was a dumb jock, and he pushed back on it. He thought the guy was totally tortured. He thought the guy was a human soul trapped in a machine that he hated being in, and that he, you know, the whole growth of the person into embracing how that makes him special. His whole relationship with his father, played brilliantly by Joe Morton, the veteran actor, all that just got eliminated from the shorter cut of the film. And like I said, they were at loggerheads. Whedon was, I think, I can't categorize this, but this has become a huge controversy in the wake of that film. He was trying to get this job done that he was hired to do, and just was not patient with any of these people. He didn't cast them himself. He wasn't part of the earlier films. Like, he really came in with his usual energy, with his sort of bossing everybody around and keeping everything happening. And the vast majority of them reacted very badly to it. I think some of the older, more mature actors, Affleck, you know, I think he's been through it. Like, he gets it. Reshoots. I'm contractually obligated to do this. I got to do that. Yep. Like, I don't think he was happy, but I think he knew that he knew the kind of puzzle piece he was, the part of this he was. I don't think Fisher's, you know, he's only been around a little while. He had idealistic ideas about what this was going to be, and I think he just flat out would not accept these changes, and in every opportunity that he's had, because I've seen all his public, you know, he's claiming racism, extreme racism, all this stuff. But when you actually list his accusations in a row with details, there's not a ton of actual pointed racism in it. It's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of like this. It's not fun to be a part of this sort of remake the film from the ground up type of process. And he just reacted to that. He said he, you know, until he gets an apology from the executives, he's not going to lay off of it. He said he will never appear in another Warner Brothers movie again. He will never play Cyborg again. All of that negativity, it was terrible. And it came in the wake of a bad movie. And it also was part of, if we're admitting it, it was part of what propelled this longer cut into existence, because behind what he's saying is a compelling story of a story with some integrity trying to be told here, that he felt was just completely robbed of him personally and of the audience in general. And that it was done in a completely politically incorrect and insensitive way. And I believe him. Like, I believe what he's saying. I do feel like there wasn't a racist agenda that caused that stuff to happen. I really do think it's our stupid, ignorant racism that just comes to play. Right. You know, when a studio executive says, we don't want the only black guy to be this angry guy all the time, he's trying to protect the diversity of the thing in his own weird, misguided way, but he is trying to do that. Right. So I don't, you know what I mean? I don't think it was evil that brought the empire down. I think it was ignorance. You know, I think that's what the the studio cut of the film really shows that they when they try and give you exactly what they think you want, it's the hardest way to find out that you don't know what they want, and that should never be part of your artistic process, because it leads to compromise and it leads to a big mess, which is what they ended up with. Big unprofitable, unpopular mess.
And one of those things that was excised from the Whedon version, that's put back in the Snyder version, is when Star Labs is infiltrated.
Fantastic sequence. Star Labs is where the Kryptonian ship is, featured very much in Batman versus Superman. It's that where the crashed ship is in the park. Where they're, they basically, the government has all these scientists working there to extract as much technology and knowledge out of this stuff as they can. It's where Doomsday was created. That's what we're talking about when we say Star Labs. The infiltration of Star Labs and Cyborg's father's sacrifice is really, really powerful. I like watching I like watching Cyborg's accident, his origin story. I like watching him play football, but again, that football sequence, it's another one where it's like, wow, how long is this going to be on screen? A really, really long time, way, way longer than it needs to be. Really, really slow and super long. So even though it sounds like I'm effusive about the Justice League film, which I kind of am, I get it. I do get people's patience run out at a certain point, and that was one of my points. So,
and in Star Labs is a character that I presume we will see in the future, Ryan Choi, fellow scientist. That's the Atom,
another presumably future member of the Justice League.
And
he's not the Atom yet, I don't think.
He's just Ryan.
He's pre origin incident, the Atom. So that's fun little Easter egg that was plucked out. I can understand why. Well, if you're going to take this whole sequence out of the movie, then there's really no point for him to be there. Because all he is during that part of it is Joe Morton's character has a lot of motivations and a lot of trickery going on. So he can't serve adequately as Johnny the Explainer during the whole scene. So they provide us with the Atom, which is, if you got to have a guy like that, if you got to have Johnny Labcoat telling us what's happening, it really helps that he's a dude from the extended universe. I dig that. It's very cool. And it goes back to that theory last week. Remember when I was like, I don't think the Kryptons had anything to do with making Cyborg or whatever. It turns out they didn't, and they did. The technology isn't Kryptonian that Cyborg was created with, but it absolutely is alien, and it does play a part in this bigger plot. So I was only half right about that. It's neat the way stuff ties together. Not the Flash, but I'll give you a Cyborg for sure.
Sometimes I forget that as of last week's show, you hadn't seen this yet.
I hadn't.
So that's I keep like, well, you knew that way. Well, no, you didn't know because you hadn't watched it yet. I didn't know that. It's one of the very listeners and viewers. It is maybe the only time. Well, it certainly is the only time I think in our podcast history probably where we've gone into starting to talk about something, we've made references to things, and I've seen it and Ryan has not. So it's one of those
that happens more than you'd think. Joel's got his finger on the pulse of stuff. I don't go to the theater anymore, and I do things at my own pace, and stick it. I don't care. And I've said that, I don't know how many times I've said that on the show. You guys want to tell 10 friends about our show and make sure they watch it. You want to, triple our numbers or whatever. And if people start writing going, you got to see this new thing, or my reviews start getting thousands of clicks instead of 12, then I'll start watching movies when you all watch them. Until then, I'm living my own deal. And
there's a reason why
I don't care who knows it. So
we are more of a film history discussion.
We are.
So
even this is last year's history now, pretty much. So
indeed. All right. So the next, so in the Whedon cut, in the theatrical cut, I guess is how it's more referred to.
We're trying not to call it the Whedon cut because it's not all his fault.
Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince, they're very flirty. There's like, it's like, oh, hey, there might be, we might have found someone who can finally take Steve Trevor's place here. Yep. And when we get to the Snyder cut, we're gonna get back.
I mean, there's only a few little bits of that, but they're noticeably not there. When Wonder Woman and Batman interact, there's definitely something between them, no doubt.
Yeah.
But what they actually talk about and their actions are very high-minded and very save the world and very heroic, and that's better. It's cleaner. It's better.
Yep.
But there is, just because they're not flirting and touching each other's hands and stuff like that, the connection, there's something there between them. Like I said, I don't know if it's romantic, but they're connected in a very key and soulful way that it is not lost in the longer version, which I appreciate.
Sure. And I think, knowing what we know about what Snyder wanted to do in what was going to, what would be the Snyder verse of the whole DCEU. I mean, we know that Bruce's affections go other places. Right. Let me get that. And so that this is also where we get the they're talking about how Bruce tells everybody that Barry appeared to him in a dream, or was it? Or was it? Okay, so then there are also these side quests that Batman goes on. He is developing a new gauntlet that can absorb energy,
which we see at work in the story, which is cool.
Yep. And he's
there was a lot of talk. Zach, like I said, this is part of why it's so stunning he didn't ever watch the other version, because he's so tied into what people think. He took all the criticisms of the ending of Man of Steel and made them the launching off point for Batman versus Superman. I told you, I think that's maybe the best bit in it. It comes right at the beginning, but it's so well thought out. This also, Batman, there was a very famous meme going around of Batman versus Superman where it showed, it was different columns, and the one showed Batman, so Superman and Wonder Woman fighting with Doomsday, and this is what Batman's doing, and it showed him sort of hiding around the corner. Because Batman against Doomsday, and this is part of where his character's at psychologically, Batman versus Doomsday is useless. You can't stop Doomsday with the bat hook, or like you can't stop Doomsday if you're Batman. That's the sad reality of it. But like any good Bruce Wayne character, he's taken to heart, and him and Alfred have come up with all this really cool stuff that really at least puts him in the fight in a way, and then it pays off later in the movie. And I feel like that's ACG. It's a side quest is what the article calls it, but it's part of his development as a character that I really think is cool.
Right. Again, I mean, we play the bit up of like, well, what's your superpower? And he's like, I'm rich, but he's also rich and incredibly intelligent and crafty and clever, and motivated. He's motivated to say, well, someone's gotta. I mean, it's part of why people love Batman. Yes. Is he isn't enhanced. He isn't he doesn't have a superpower. He's just just a guy
who
really
happens
rich,
to have super intelligent, clever investigator and innovator of technology, but still just a guy. It's just a guy. That's where the fantasy of Batman is if with unlimited resource and enough, startup capital, we could be Batman.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Again, listener and viewer, if you want to give Ryan and I like a couple $1 billion, let's
say 2.2.
We could be Batman.
We could be Batman. Or if you just want to send us some hockey pads and a shotgun, we'll go duke it out in a parking garage someplace with some bad guys. Just to have Christian Bale just to look me in the eye and go, I'm not wearing hockey pads. Super cool. I'd be like, cool, I've lived a full life. Take me off to jail.
We also get in the Snyder version a different appearance of Deathstroke. Joe Manganiello's
Oh, right.
yeah.
He was supposed to be the bad guy in the Batfleck film.
Right.
Not my favorite choice, I have to say, for bad guy Deathstroke.
Yeah.
To the point that when you just called him that, I didn't even know who you were talking about but now I do. So yeah, there's another sort of villain character that they're setting up.
Yeah. In this one, we see him. It's a different dialogue exchange with Lex Luthor. Yeah, it's
just a forming of a Legion of Doom, and it ain't bad. I mean, I don't hate the scene, but
yeah,
I find Deathstroke to be, well, of course, I think it was going to be more than that, but I just find him to be
right.
Once you've done this and you've stopped the alien invasion, and I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, just go back to these guys punching each other in an alley. Like, that's pretty dull to me, but I suspect it would have been more than that. So we'll talk about that in a sec.
Right. You already mentioned some reshoots, and in the shoots,
there were a few reshoots for this film. It wasn't just what they shot, but it was important to me to say off the start that the vast majority of it was just what they shot. We didn't. Yeah. We talked about the reshoot. We did talk about Arthur and his saving that guy in the tugboat, and that sequence, that long music video sequence where he walks to the end of the dock and jumps in the ocean. That's another one where I'm like, you're not going to play the whole song, are you? Well, just 2 verses and 2 choruses, almost the whole song. The whole song. No, it's just 2/3 of the song, almost, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's just too much, man. It's cool looking, but at that point in the movie, I did like the rescue, though. That was fun.
Yeah.
It not needed, but it was fun, at least.
Okay, so we get
Nightmares. Are you already at the end? No, we're at
Superman. We're at Superman's reshoots.
Right. Well, there were Superman's reshoots. Okay, very famously, Henry Cavill, who was off making Mission Impossible, whichever.
Fallout.
The most recent one. And he has this very cool CIA mustache in that film. And he was contractually obligated to keep his mustache and not shave it for the entire time he's working on Mission Impossible. And he was contractually obligated to do reshoots if necessary for Justice League. But he showed up with his mustache, and there's all these great still photography for his work during the reshoots where he's running around in the Superman suit with this big Italian style mobster mustache.
So good.
And they had the only way you couldn't have Superman with a mustache, so they did this thing called digital mustache removal, which is one of my favorite things ever. Yeah. And it's one of those things where sometimes it's done pretty well and you can't really tell. And there's a few freeze frames that people have chosen that it shows you just how poorly it was done in motion and in some scenes where it's just not an easy thing to do. It's, with all the magic we can create, making a mustache go away, creating one, we're killer at that. Right. Making a big one go away on a guy's face, we have a long ways to go yet, is what the reshoots proved. So yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the Nightmare stuff and those reshoots, but you're talking about the studio reshoots to make some connective tissue to the Whedon cut version required Henry Cavill's presence, and all that crap is gone. And it's the worst looking and baddest stuff in the film. The scene again, Superman's revival in the longer version, it's clean, it's scary, it's the jokes that were in it that didn't work are gone. There's only one left and it works good enough for 3, and it's just all really, really well done. Lois is showing up and taking him off, and his awakening I always thought was kind of corny, but again in a pleasant enough comic book sort of way, if that makes any sense. She brings him home and brings him back to us, and he shows up as black suited Superman,
yeah.
And that's been restored for the Justice League, which is always supposed to be the case. So
right.
And
it does tie into the nightmare.
It does.
Yeah. So
because he's on our side and he's Superman and he's back, but he is not the same thing he was before he died. And the film just only hints at that a little bit, but it shows us enough of it that we understand that we're walking a bit of a tightrope with him. So, yeah. And that, I think that's kind of cool for sure.
The Whedon film, the whole finale. So we kind of got to skip. So the battle's going on. Steppenwolf is and we made reference to it last week with the family that apparently
the Russian family.
The Russian family that lives in this nuclear fallout town.
Again, I get it. I get the storytelling trope here that you're trying to do. This family is supposed to represent us, and we're supposed to feel more connected to the movie because they're here. The problem is, and it's weird because you would think it would be the opposite. Expanding your horizons to include civilians in the end of the story should help the world feel larger. But it doesn't. It makes the world feel like a big empty world with one Russian family in it. And that's the result of that thing. And they're a huge part of the end of the theatrical version. Really, really big part of it. And they're just completely gone in this other version. So you really just have these superheroes fighting the bad guys in these big, exciting ways. And the rest of the populace is on the sidelines and not really even shown. I don't approve of that when I say it out loud, but when you watch it in the movie, it's what's needed. And we're 3 hours and 15 minutes into this thing. We can't have just a bunch of other people being introduced and all this other crap just on the sidelines. You just can't have it. The way the superheroes use their powers, the way they work together. You can read it for me here in a second, though. It's the last bit he has in the finale where Steppenwolf dies. Like they literally 4 of them kill him.
Yeah.
They all kill him in these different ways in the longer version. And that's stupid, but that's the point of the team up. And that somehow, when you spread everybody to the hills, you got Flash protecting a family, you got, you know what I mean? You don't have them working together, and the whole idea of the team up is sort of lost, honestly.
Yeah.
In the Snyder version, it's back. It's back in a silly, staged, slow motion-y, takes too long way, but at least the meaning of the thing is there. And the movie benefits so greatly for that. And the loss of the Russian family is key to that. Read Steppenwolf Dies, because the way Matt wrote it is so funny.
Well, like you said, so the team up is Cyborg is trying to connect with the mother boxes. Diana and Arthur are fending off Steppenwolf.
We didn't even talk about the mother boxes, and we're not gonna.
Flash is racing around trying to achieve maximum charge. Bruce is leading the parademons away. We do get Arthur surfing down a building.
But they all come together to work together. That's the important part. It's Steppenwolf's death. It's the very last couple sentences in the thing.
But then, so Snyder Cut Steppenwolf is it's finished off very differently with a bit of overkill. Arthur stabs him. Yes. Superman sends him soaring. Diana chops his head off. And Darkseid crushes his head.
His head goes through a portal into another world, and his master steps on his head and crushes it.
Yep. So
is overkill, but that's the ending.
He's very much done. There's no. Yes. We're not going to be like, well, maybe they could bring Steppenwolf back.
No. Who plays Steppenwolf anyway? Is it Colin Fiore or is?
Oh boy, let me just a second here.
Feels like an important person, and yet in both versions, I'm not aware of who it is.
Yeah.
But that's weird. It's the first movie I can think of that's like that, where the guy's so digital and his voice is so manipulated that there's no sense of an actor's performance really there anymore. That's not a improvement or drawback. That's literally what it is in both films. So I guess it doesn't matter.
Well, give me 30 seconds here. I'll find it.
30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's the Zack Snyder version of finding it. How long are you gonna draw this searching on the internet?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I clicked on the wrong thing. Oh, no.
Zack Snyder action sequences are like watching a web page load in 1994.
He is, let's see. Steppenwolf is played by oh my god. Is it Ciarán Hinds?
Ciarán Hinds.
Ciarán Hinds, yeah.
Wow. We love Ciarán Hinds here on the movie show.
Yeah, I can just never know how to pronounce his
how many
name.
times have we brought him up? 100 times. We love him. I had no idea.
Brought him up just a few weeks ago.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea that's who that was.
There you go.
Well, talk about thankless jobs.
No. Okay. Here we go. Sorry, I clicked on an ad and just everything went kerflooey. Yeah. So we get the final flight, and then there is
Ciarán Hinds. Ciarán Hinds was a big highlight of our Jane Austen show.
Right.
I don't know if there's a lot of crossover between this and that one, but Kieran's the link that makes it happen. He's a diverse guy. He's awesome.
Well, we do get some time travel. There's time travel as part of this finale.
That's neat
too.
Yeah, it's neat.
And and that plays into what is happening with the future. And that includes we get Jared Leto returning as I pronounce it, the Joker. So we get Suicide Squad's Joker
is the last time you'll ever see Jared Leto's Joker on screen. But he's welcome again. Why not? It's 4 hours long. He's welcome, and he's in the it's not a post-credit sequence, but it's a coda to the film, an epilogue to the film, and they have a fairly interesting scene together, and the version of the Joker interacting with Batman, even though it's clearly the same character, there's an integrity to the character. It's very different than the guy that we see interacting with Harley Quinn in, he shows a very different face to Batman than he showed to her, and that's neat. Matter of fact, there's a lot of potential in the Joker that we see at the end of Justice League, much more than there was in the version that we saw in the David Ayer's Suicide Squad, in my opinion. As fun as he was in that, it wasn't a guy where you're like, well, it wasn't a guy to be taken very seriously. That wasn't a very serious movie. This is a really serious movie, and it was neat to me. I don't lament his loss. I'd rather see what they have in store now going forward, but it's neat to see him in a different light. It's neat to see him how he could have been something.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Because our flash judgments are so fast sometimes that sometimes it's cool. And it's really weird to see him, Batman and Deathstroke, like teaming up in that sequence. Like, again, none of it's really explained. It's a tease. We don't know what it is. We recognize the costumes are the same as the Nightmare, but this scene doesn't feel, they call it the Nightmare ending, but it doesn't feel like the Nightmare. It doesn't feel like a dream at all. It feels very, very real. And that makes it very different, even though it's got the same weird coloring and the same Batman in the desert costume and all that.
Yep.
Ben Affleck looks super skinny in it for some reason. I don't know if that's the costume or because we're used to seeing him in the big Mecha Batman suit or whatever, but
right.
It's weird. He looks hollow and beaten, and I don't know if that's on purpose or if that's just a cool thing that happened. No point really talking about the extended content of that stuff, because that's to discover. But how about that pose before we kind of skipped it? But what about that pose of our heroes? How long does that go on? How many things could Joel look up on the internet while that pose was happening at the end of Justice League, where they're all just, there's nothing in it. They're just standing in a line.
They're standing there looking heroic
while the time ticks away into eternity.
But
I'm sorry, I really enjoyed the longer version of Justice League, but come on, we have to call some of these things out. They were insane how long they took with some of this stuff. The worst one was which is why I circled back and brought it up, was Aquaman walking on a dock to a song and jumping into the ocean in 2.5-3 minutes is way too long.
Right.
Way too long.
Right. We have so in Whedon's cut, the Lex Luthor Deathstroke scene was the
tagline at the end.
Was the post credit
one of
scene.
2 post credit sequences. Yep. The other one was Flash and Superman racing together.
Gonna race, gonna race.
Gone.
Who's fair? Yeah, and that is
who's the fastest.
And so all of this, of course, was, we were going to get a, especially with that Deathstroke scene, we were going to get a another Batman film.
Yep.
This one with Ben Affleck.
And Ben Affleck's Batman is really cool, and I'm really, really glad he was restored to the way he was meant to be in this longer version, because I really dig that performance. He was reluctant to take that role. He took it because he liked the idea of the older, grizzled, cynical Batman, and he liked the idea of bringing a guy like that back to the light. He had been directing these films because he felt his acting career started to sag, and he essentially was directing movies. He learned how to direct, right? He's already a pretty accomplished Academy Award-winning screenwriter, but he became a director so that he could produce projects for himself to star in. Like it's funny because a lot of director actors are like that, but he's very upfront about it. He's like, I needed something to do where I felt a little more in control of my career rather than just picking the best things that I could that came along. Right. And I won't lie. I wanted to be in charge of projects where I got to play more interesting characters. And he accomplished that very much in The Town and in Argo, certainly. And I think in his mob film as well, which is not as entertaining a movie as those others, but is really, really in-depth storytelling, in which as an actor, he's really, really great in it.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I loved it, I'd remember the name of it, but whatever. The point is, he did that other movie that was really, really good. He was supposed to direct and star in Batman, and the fans really got on his case when he said, after doing 2 of these, I can't direct and star in Batman. I can do it in this movie, but you can't do the job of director when you're tied up in the bat suit and you're exhausted from all this action. It's like, I just can't do both. I don't see how I can appear in a Batman movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And act in it at the same time. And they were all like, no, you can do it. Oh, we want it. They just,
now suddenly everyone was on board with Affleck as Batman. The same people that, were horrified that he was even cast as Batman.
Who hated Batman versus Superman for some reason, but just loved Batman. It's just weird. I feel like there's no rhyme or reason to it. They're not, I don't know that they're the same people, but it feels like it's some of the same people.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like the same people.
It feels like the logic is coming from the same place. Anyway, we won't have that. That's done.
Yeah,
you can
write
all the petitions you want. HBO Max is not going to produce the Batfleck film. They're already almost wrapped on principal photography for the Matt Reeves who made Cloverfield and Let Me In and the last 2 brilliant Planet of the Apes remakes. He is a really strong director from the J.J. Abrams kind of stock director's place. And Robert Pattinson, who's a fantastic and interesting actor, is going to play Batman in that. And so
it is going. And well, no, they're done. There's a cut has been seen already, and apparently it is brutal and
I would expect those Planet of the Apes films are not for the squeamish. Even if they're not bloody or violent, they're dark, oppressive, dark. Difficult films. And
they're like, this is I mean, the word brutal by some of the people that I follow online that are plugged in, they're saying the word brutal has been thrown around a lot in terms of describing this film. It's just a brutal, just a punishing movie. in terms of, I mean, and then I think there's a little in the teaser. I mean, you just see Pattinson's Batman. He's like punching, and then there's a little pause, and he just punches some more, and it's just like, oh my god, yeah, he's just gonna beat people to a pulp. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that, and I just want to say, just along with what you're saying about the early reactions to it, in a way, good. If you want to be light and fun, and you want to have everybody tapping their thing, you want people sitting through 12 minutes of credits to watch yet another meaningless joke at the end of your film. That's what Warner's wanted. That's what they coveted, and what they proved is they're only capable of doing the light, lame, cloying version of that. They don't have it in them to do it. They don't have the artists. Maybe they could get them together or retool this whole thing. They did make Aquaman, which is more along those lines, but they just, even that.
Aquaman is along those lines. Shazam is along those lines.
Well, Shazam, I think just naturally is a lighter thing. Yeah. Although even Shazam's, and these are the films that came later that we're sort of sticking in at the end here. Shazam, we talked about. I mean, it is light and fun. It's really fun, but it's the bad guys in Shazam do awful, horrible things. There's this weird mix of like an otherworldly threat that is really dangerous and brutally violent, mixed with this little kid who's got to come and save the day. And the Shazam's delightful, I thought, but its main failure is it doesn't hook those things up at the end. There is not an awakening and a call to arms against darkness at the end. It just goes full on. When I'm talking about music, I call it full on lava lamp. Like 70s songs where when you're thinking they're just going to kick into gear like an 80s song and just rock out, and they just go, woo, and everybody's stoned and you're floating through the air and stuff. Like Shazam just goes all kiddie movie, and it's really weird. And I hope they find a better balance on the next one. But I love Zachary Levi. I thought that I loved Shazam when I was a kid. I was a dumb kid, and I've grown up since, but he was my favorite when I was a kid. So I'm more of a Green Lantern guy now, like, for whatever that matters. But that film,
that film was fun, and it had a really fun
Shazam
cast.
Is fun.
Mark Strong is a great villain.
A dumb teen as a huge superstar villain. Like, it has that Freaky Friday funness to it. There's nothing not fun about that concept.
And so Birds of Prey, the Emancipation of Harley Quinn, or whatever the extended title is.
We talked about that in our year-end episode. I really didn't like that.
Yeah.
I liked some things about it. There was hiding in there. There was a girl power aspect to it that I actually am willing to separate. But that film too, even though that was a bloodless, easy to digest PG-13 film compared to the Suicide Squad films, what actually takes place in that film is brutal, awful, and ugly. And if you're gonna, I'll say it again, it goes along with the Pattinson Batman movie and what I think the DC film should be. If you're gonna do that stuff, then do it. Don't just say you did it and let us off the hook. Do it. You want to kill a nuclear family or whatever in front of our eyes, and do it. You want to peel their faces off while they're begging for their lives, and do it. And if you don't have the nuts to do it, you don't have the conviction of the story you want to tell, then what are you doing? You're completely wasting our time. And that's how I feel about that film. And that's why I feel like, yes, brutal. I mean, maybe not brutal, but the reason the longer Justice League's so much better is it's more serious, it's darker, it's loftier, it's higher minded, and it's all those things that they've proven they're good at, that the Nolan Batman films were good at, that Man of Steel was good at. You may not like those as much as lighter fare, but they are successful in their own right. And it seems like they're diversions from that. I don't know how you make a super serious Shazam film. I don't think you should try. Yeah. Okay. So it's not all things to all people. Certainly the the James Gunn, which I haven't seen, but the James Gunn Suicide Squad movie, it can't be serious. I don't see how.
No, it is not. I mean, I have seen it. It is. It absolutely brings the brutality back. It is lighter in tone, but there's some darkness underneath there. There's some stuff going on with Suicide Squad, with James Gunn's Suicide Squad that feels more in that universe. But
I think one of the big letdowns of Wonder Woman 1984, which I enjoyed to some degree, but I think one of the big letdowns is that there's no real bad guy. The bad guy's just a sort of loser. He's dangerous. I get that they sell that, but they don't. Wonder Woman is this sort of iconic thing. She's an ideal that we need to live up to. That can be frustrating. I get it, screenwriters. Superman, Wonder Woman, these aren't easy characters to put a story around because they are so larger than life, and you really do want to humanize them, but you can't. I think the pitfall there was that they humanized her to the point of really bringing her down into an ugly sort of soap opera area that we just don't want to see that character in. And they, part of that is instead of a lot of jibber jabber, maybe some more slow-mo scenes and stuff. I don't know. At this point, it seems weird to say that, but Wonder Woman climbing up those stairs in that ladder in that trench in World War I. I mean, takes your breath away. That's Wonder Woman. You don't have to give us a whole movie of that, but don't forget that. Next time you make a Wonder Woman movie, don't forget that.
Yeah,
don't
and
forget
putting her in a golden phoenix costume thing does not have the same impact.
It doesn't.
So
it doesn't. Fighting like it's like a My Pillow guy villain is weird. It just doesn't help.
Yep.
Even though I get it, I kind of even like some of it. Giving her like a gal pal that turns into a freak is like I just don't think it works, and I don't think you did it wrong. I just think it literally doesn't work. It's not a good fit for the material, and I don't think they did it wrong. I really think that's an enjoyable film, so I don't mean to just diss on it, but I do feel from step one, the first step they took on it was completely wrong-headed, and it was all kind of downhill from there. Give her a threat that's worth it. Give her a threat that makes her smile, like when Doomsday smacked her back on her ass in Batman versus Superman. Give her a story that's worthy of her. Wonder Woman 1984, for all its fun pleasures, and it just isn't that. It absolutely isn't that.
Yeah.
What one have we left out? Aquaman. We pretty much dissected that.
We made reference to some of the important elements of Aquaman because of
Aquaman comes close. Aquaman comes close. Busy, talky, huge digital, massive spectacle. Otherworldly, and I enjoyed Aquaman too, so I'm not going to completely diss on that, but it's and I liked the actual underwater politics, but I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, man.
Well, it's a superhero movie with two villains. It's
very cluttered.
Like you said, we had the politics, which is interesting, and Black Manta, which to me was not.
No, they didn't do a very good job with Mantis or whatever he is. And after him fighting all these immortal underwater characters, is him going to battle against Mantis going to feel like, it just feels like a little.
Yeah.
Although tonally, I thought it was fun. I mean, they clearly were going for that, and I thought it was fun. I thought, like you say, it's not that the dialogue was great, because I don't think it was, but whatever that little magic is, Amber Heard is a very, the more self-serious you can cast her, sort of the better she is, and she's really great in that movie, because she's totally a straight man to a hero that's that's nothing but wisecracks and sort of, it's not even wisecracks. He's not a wisecracker. He's
just a swagger. He's all swagger.
He's all swagger, and anything that's not cool, he just sort of rips on. In a way, he's like a fanboy in that way, Arthur. He is, because he just he's just sort of blowing everything off. That's actually kind of fun. And then he's got to step up. So Willem Dafoe and Patrick Wilson, all these guys giving these stilted costume drama like performances, I think it does sort of work. Yeah. But it's still, compared to the movies that movie's trying to emulate, it's still sort of a pale shadow of it. So if you're going to have these massive digital things, then again, make it worth it. Make it worth his time, Aquaman. Yeah. But as a standalone film, I don't hate it. I don't hate any of these. The only movie I didn't even hate Birds of Prey. I just felt like I felt like it was a failure, but I didn't hate it. It brought me closer to Harley, who I've never really liked and can't understand. I understand her a little better, so it's a step along that journey. Margot Robbie, who last week, I don't want to make you think that I don't like her. She's fantastic. She's really, really good in stuff. She was amazing in I, Tonya. She's really incredible in Bombshell. She's just as good as they come, but she is that rare breed of actor where she can dress up on Oscar night and very likely will get an award at some point. She'll bring home the hardware. I believe that. She'll also, sort of undress for you and slink around and be sexy, and like she'll do it all. She's Hollywood's most prized thing for that reason. She'll literally she's game. She'll do whatever. But she's a really, really good performer that deserves a character that makes some sense. And again, I mean, maybe some of that happens in the. But I saw an interview with her the other day where they were asking her, so when's the next time you're going to play Harley Quinn? And she's like, I don't really know. And it sounded like, I hope never.
Well, yeah, I mean, she
had that sort of feel to it, I don't want to put words in her mouth.
I have a feeling if they write her a big enough check and the story's interesting enough that she would absolutely come back and do it.
She's scared. She's game. She's not scared of showing up in a big bombastic film, but
no, because she could. Well, I mean, and that's what I would, whether I like I said, I didn't see Birds of Prey, but I mean, in both Suicide Squad movies, the moment she is on the screen, she elevates everything, and she the scenes with her and Idris Elba are better. The scenes with her and what's the weird looking dude, he's like our favorite weird looking actor. He was in
David I'm going to say his name wrong.
Yes,
he's a friend of a friend too. I know him pretty well. Yeah, or I don't know him, but I know a guy who knows him. So I get these little behind the scenes nuggets of David DeMatz. Damn your Eastern European name, David. He's a fantastic actor too. He's in a lot of Denis Villeneuve's films.
Yeah,
he's in the upcoming Dune.
Yeah, and she and him have some great little scenes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, she clearly elevates the game of everyone around her, as well as just being really, really good herself. And this is in a comic, this is in a James Gunn's, violent, silly comic
book film. Yeah.
So
so she's a good actor. I struggle with the character. I don't get it. Yeah. And I feel like I'm watching movie after movie after movie here, and I still don't get it, and it's frustrating to me. I admit, I liked the girlfriend boyfriend business because I felt like that I could sort of wrap my brain around a little bit. But how do you go from being like an overeducated psychologist to having a lower class accent, and you know what I mean? Like that's not. Yeah. And maybe there's a split personality aspect there, but the films don't seem to be exploring that. So I just don't understand. I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I get that she's sexy, no doubt, but more. She's great.
Yeah.
Do it's like with Wonder Woman.
She's going to be
something
around a while.
Worthy of her, and you will end up with something good. But you need to aim higher than they're aiming. That's my feeling. I feel like Matt Reeves's Batman is doing that. We'll talk about the next cycle. Got a Flash movie coming. That's done. Got a new Batman movie coming. Got a Aquaman sequel coming. There will certainly, I believe Patty Jenkins will be allowed to direct it. There'll be another Wonder Woman movie, no doubt.
Yep.
And then we'll see where we're at. But
and there'll be another team
version.
Yeah, there'll be a team up movie at some point. Yeah.
It's not necessarily darkness. There's a self-seriousness to it. And there is a self-seriousness to these characters, in my opinion. And embrace that part of them. Don't run from it. You just look like idiots when you do.
Right.
Don't run from it. Doesn't mean we can't have fun at the movies, but do you from here on out, and I think you'll be better off.
If you got, I mean, there's something that we have talked about on this show several times. Make your movie. If you do it with conviction and do it with intelligence and style, we'll go with.
We may not like them all, but we'll. You got to respect staying true to yourself.
Sure. And this is, and again, that pretty much sums up, my relationship with Zack Snyder. I'm not always going to like it, but I do respect that he makes the movies that he's going to make. Yeah. He has he has a strong voice and he's going to go with it. I just don't always care for it, but whatever, as long as I'll see it because he's always interesting. So,
and as a little insider baseball thing, we did try to get through these 2 whole episodes without bringing up the MCU, and we pretty much we winked at you a little bit, but we pretty much didn't.
We grazed by it. It could, and
because I felt like that's a rabbit hole we've never. You just see us go down that, and we would never see us again.
That's an entirely different show. If that's something that you want, we certainly can do it. If it's
MCU versus DCEU, MCU wins. We don't need to get into all the wheres and why for us. The proof's in the pudding completely at this point. I
saw a great TikTok that was like, it was one person doing all these roles, but they were like, DC. All right. So, okay, Marvel, you can do movies. We're going to concentrate on TV. Cool. Yeah. We're going to do, and we'll just dominate everything TV, and you guys can do these. Oh yeah, sure. No, cool. Right. So we're agreed here, right? You're going to stay just in movies, right? You're not going to come. Yeah. We're going to be, and then it was like, yeah. And then it was like, okay, all right, well, cool. We'll see you later. And then it's like Disney Plus. So Marvel, when are we doing TV? We'll do TV. Don't worry.
One of the and it's that's fun, but one of the real world most badass things that I've ever seen was when Batman Superman had its release date for about 4 months, and they slapped down Captain America Civil War on the same date.
Yeah,
on the same date, and they said, we're doing it. And Superman had to say, okay, at first they're like, we're doing it too, for a few months, so that the headlines wouldn't read, Warner Brothers moves Batman versus Superman day after. So they waited a few weeks till it wasn't a story anymore and promptly moved it to October. And that tells you everything. From a business standpoint, they were like, we want that date. And we're going to have it. So, and you're not going to play chicken with them at this point. The Disney empire is on top of the world. So,
right. So do we know what we're talking? Do we know what we're talking about next week?
No.
No, I couldn't remember. Well, no, I couldn't remember if we were.
I came up with this superhero crap, man. Maybe it's your turn to think of something.
Well, we'll see. I just didn't know if I couldn't remember off the top of my head if we set a date for our next movie club. If that was already.
Okay, so that's movie coming club's down the coming. We're in talks with a friend of the show, Rob, to do a show with us. If you want a teaser, there's fun stuff coming up for sure.
Yeah, we just haven't set these dates yet. I just couldn't remember.
Halloween's coming up, so we'll get into some scary stuff. That'll certainly happen. But I have no idea what we're doing next week.
We'll come up with something fun
in front of all our friends.
No, I didn't mean to do that. I just was like, did we set a date? Are we doing movie club next week? But no, that's coming down. That'll probably be in October or
movie week special movie club special canine edition. That's happening.
Yep, it is. It is. I'm pretty excited
but not
about
next
it.
week. I'm open-minded to it, but I'd have to watch a bunch of movies. And
no, if I want to put you on the spot, Ryan, I will just announce that one of the topics that I always send you that you're like, I like this, but that would take some work to do. I could just announce that that's what we're doing,
and then I'll have to do it.
We'd have to do it, but I won't. We'll come up with something fun for you next
has
week.
1,000 good ideas for. He just needs a more.
I just come up with them on
podcast partner because I'm just too.
Well, and I come up with them like way too late for us to actually pull them off.
Well, they're awesome. I mean, you really come up with like really awesome, easy to sell, fun ideas, but they're hard to talk about.
They would be. And and for someone who it's especially you who have such a wide I want to phrase this in as positive a way as I can. You have such a wide swath of knowledge and acknowledge greatness in so many different areas. You can't just say, hey, Ryan, pick your favorite blah, 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 or let's
right,
do this.
Hard.
You can't, you just can't. That's just, and that's also something that's not really,
the very first thing we said on our very first show is when someone asks you that, you should at least try.
Yeah.
Pick something. Just, maybe it's wrong. Maybe you change your mind a half hour later. Maybe you say, "Oh, I should have said this." But
right, but I can't. But also, I can't send you those ideas on a Friday evening when we record on Saturday and say,
they do require some thought. Yeah. More than that, I am what I am at this point. We're old men. I need to look at the. I need to look at it and go, yeah, I can talk about that. And if I look at it and go, I don't know how I would talk about that, pretty much gets rejected every time.
All right, so we'll come up with something.
Say, not as I do. And
we'll come up with something fun next week on the show. But until then, thank you so much for joining us. Bye, everybody. You guys.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.